On March the 22nd. This will be their final game until they take on Chile in February. The two sides are out. Let's enjoy the national anthems. Well, it's far from full in Abu Dhabi, but the Egyptian supporters, as they always do, making plenty of noise here. A chance once again to test themselves against the team considered Africa's finest, Ivory Coast. The only problem is that this generation have been unable to prove it. They may be a bit ring rusty. It's Ivory Coast's first match for 2 months. Their last game was a 3-0 victory away to Austria in Linz on November the 14th. But of course, most of their players here in the side that's been selected are first-team regulars in a number of Europe's major leagues. The captain's armband in the absence of Didier Drogba from the starting 11 goes to Didier Zakura, a centurion in terms of caps for the Ivory Coast. This is his 107th for the 32-year-old former Tottenham Hotspur midfielder. Well, Egypt were on a good run. They were 14 games unbeaten between February 2012 and June, winning 12 of that 14, a run that was remarkably ended by the Central African Republic when they won by 3-2 in the qualifying first leg. One or two familiar names there for viewers of past Africa Cup of Nations, the likes of Mohamed Abu Trika, for example, an experienced campaigner for Egypt in what is a fairly young squad selected by Bob Bradley, and he'll be keen that they improve on Thursday's performance when they were well beaten by Ghana. Kolo Touré, the man in the centre of that almost huddle for Ivory Coast. And there is the 11, probably not too far away from the 11 that will start the competition. Of course, a lot will depend on the recovery of Yaya Touré, and Didier Drogba is likely to regain the captain's armband and the striking role from the giant that is Lassina Traoré, 6'8", the Anji Mahashkala striker. Sabri Lamouchi is the latest coach charged with finally guiding this team to the promised land of the Africa Cup of Nations trophy. So Abu Dhabi is the setting then. It's Ivory Coast versus Egypt. A last chance for the Elephants to fine-tune before opening up their Africa Cup of Nations tournament next Tuesday when they take on Togo in Rustenburg. Wayne Boyce here to take you through the action. Pleased to say joining me is Danny Mills, and Danny, just the one game to warm up for such a massive tournament, but given the ages of some of these Ivory Coast players, it's felt this year really does have to be it for the Elephants.
Yeah, they've got an awful lot of experience, so close in the past, obviously, to winning it. And a bit like we've seen with England in the past, you know, this has been labelled as the golden generation. Really now they need to produce the goods. And I think one game, of course, you know, this for most of these players that play in Europe, a lot of them play in the Premier League, it comes at a bad time of the season. You can't really fit in too many warm-up games, and that's probably the reason for just the one.
So we are underway. Egypt in the familiar red shirts. Ivory Coast changed in all green. They are on a remarkable unbeaten run. They've not lost a game in 90 minutes or extra time since the 17th of November 2010, a 3-1 defeat against Poland. They went the entirety of 2011 and 2012 unbeaten. The only loss, which of course rankles, was the penalty shootout defeat to Zambia in the 2012 Africa Cup of Nations final. Early possession then for Egypt. It's Fati. Fati with the throw. Good back again to Goma. Goma wearing the captain's armband, the only survivor from the 11 that started against Ghana. Here's Ashore. They like to keep the ball for long periods, Egypt. It's a style of play that has brought them so much success on the continental stage. Of course, having failed to qualify for the last Cup of Nations and this one as well, they've not lost a Nations Cup game since 2004 at the finals itself. They're currently on a record of 19 unbeaten at the Cup of Nations. A run, of course, they won't be able to defend. Solbamba to Zakora. Toure. Up towards Lassina Traore. Towers above everybody out there. Particularly his marker there, Rami Rabia.
Ivory Coast just struggling to get the ball at the moment, allowing Egypt to play. Obviously, a lot of these teams, you know, in their home countries, used to playing in very hot atmospheres, very hot temperatures. You know, the game is of a slower pace, but at the moment, Ivory Coast just sitting back a little bit too much. Maybe just a little bit overconfident that maybe when they get the ball, they can go and score it.
There's Gervinho. Looking for Traore. Immediately being pressured by Goma. Traore did well to get the ball in at all from that tight area. Now Mosen for Egypt. A bit isolated initially, looking to take on Kolo Toure. Lively start, Danny, from Egypt.
Yeah, I'm not sure how match fit Kolo Toure is. Hasn't had an awful lot of game time at Manchester City. To me, looks a little bit heavy, a little bit lethargic, and just hesitated in both those challenges. And I think, yeah, that's an opportunity for Egypt. Maybe single him out. You know, if they can isolate him one-on-one, will cause them problems.
Tiote has been dispossessed. Is Solbamba. Yeah, just 8 appearances in the Premier League this season for Kolo Toure. Here is Zakora. Toure. Frustratingly for him, of course, with Vincent Kompany's sending off, he may have got a shot over the next 3 games, but of course now he's heading off to South Africa. Here's Zakora. Eboué. Back from Gradle. Ivory Coast finally getting a touch of the ball, but that was out of play, and it's a throw for Egypt.
A lot of experience in this Ivory Coast side. You know, players have played in the competition before, you know, play across Europe. Amongst them, you know, have won numerous trophies. And you just feel like, I think, the only thing that could go against them, you know, is that overconfidence, is that complacency factor. They possibly think they've just got to turn up and win the game.
There's Gervinho. Almost beat himself there, made it easy for Wael Goma. Well, North African teams have been the bane of Ivory Coast in previous Nations Cup, and they faced two of them in Group D. Both Tunisia and Algeria will represent tough challenges for Ivory Coast.
Yeah, Gervinho unlucky there. Standing foot, just clipped, just pulled away from him, took him off balance. I think the referee got that one wrong, should have been a free kick.
It's Traoré. TNA to Zakura. Good pressure from Egypt though, forcing the ball back to Bamba. Now Touré. Gradle to Tiote. Zakura. TNA. It's a lovely left foot. It's too high for Traoré, but the header from Gradle. It's always going to be difficult to get any power into it, and it was comfortable for El Hadari.
Yeah, the cross was just behind him. I think it was really aiming for Traoré, trying to use his height advantage. But interesting so far. Obviously, Bob Bradley's influence on the Egyptian side, very organised, quite rigid in their formation. Not really what we've come to expect from African teams at all. Obviously, I've seen the USA play several times over the last few years under Bob Bradley, and that's what they were. They were organised, you know, they were efficient, and obviously he's trying to get that base, if you like, with the Egyptians.
A talented player, Lassina Traoré. He's been linked to one or two Premier League clubs. Played most of his club football in Russia for Kuban and now Anji Mahashkala. Liverpool fans will remember him from the Europa League clash. Here's Mosen. It's a goal kick for Ivory Coast.
Good strength and pace from Bamba. Just gets his body in between man and ball, strength, just sees it out of play. I think, you know, his partnership with Kolo Touré is going to be absolutely vital. They've got to complement each other. Kolo Touré has all the experience. Bamba has, you know, probably the pace and the power that, you know, he may be going to have to get him out of trouble at times.
Well, it was the first choice partnership for last year's Nations Cup. Those two started the final against Zambia together. In fact, 7 of the starting 11 here started the 0-0 draw with Zambia. So not too much chopping and changing in the Ivory Coast squad in general from last year. It's Ashore. Out towards Fatty this time. TNA wins the header. Does have something of a wand of a left foot, Sakin TNA, if he is allowed to get forward. This is neat play by Egypt though. Trying to break through here. TNA getting back, and finally it's cleared away by Kolo Touré, but good play by Omar Gaba.
It's a good run from Gaba. Just trying to get the first tackle from Bamba came in, wasn't strong enough, allowed him to go on, and then it's almost like he got to the edge of the box and just ran out of ideas. Bob Bradley will be a little bit disappointed. Once he got in a good position, he then wasn't quite sure what to do. Didn't know whether to shoot, go alone, or whether to cross the ball, and in the end that allowed the Ivory Coast to get back and get the tackles in.
Zakura. Gradle helps it on to Tiote. Gradle continued the run. Tiote again. Sol Bamba. This is Touré. The referee waving play on, and this is Gaba again. And it is a free kick to Egypt this time. And a yellow card too for Max Gradle. Well, they're complaining about the first challenge, the Ivory Coast players.
I'm not sure he's hurt quite that badly. Didn't look overly serious. Max Grado, got to be careful. Seen him at Leeds several times. Occasionally in the past has one or two issues with his temperament, has got involved in things. I'm not quite sure what Max Grado has been booked for there. I think if anything it's the foul from Zakora. Max Grado just coming across the back of him. Not an awful lot he can do, and possibly the referee's got that wrong. If he's going to book anybody, it should have been Zakora.
I mean, maybe from the referee's angle, behind Max Grado, he thinks that it was Grado that caught it, but you're absolutely right, it was Zakora, wasn't it, who made contact. No wonder he was upset, Grado. First yellow card of the game, though. Goes to the Sanetian winger.
I think difficult for both of these teams. Not many fans in the stadium, no real atmosphere, and at the moment Ivory Coast just look a little bit rusty.
That's easy for Barry in the Ivory Coast goal. Well, Egypt are one of the main reasons why this generation has yet to become African champions. Beat them in the 2006 final on penalties. They then knocked out Ivory Coast again in the semi-finals, 2008. Pressing once more here, Mosen. And then it was Algeria's turn in 2010 to beat Ivory Coast in the quarter-finals. So these North African teams who have generally ended the Ivory Coast run in the Cup of Nations until Zambia, of course, ripped up the form book and held on to win the final last year. There's Kolo Touré. It's almost tougher, isn't it, when everybody expects you to win it every year?
Well, just looking at that, I think, you know, Egypt seem to be taking this game a little bit more seriously. You know, they're playing at a higher tempo, they're trying to get the ball back. For the Ivory Coast, it's a difficult one. All the pressure is on them. Basically, you know, there's probably 9 of those players that will possibly start in the opening game. And, you know, they don't want to get injured. They don't want to pick up any knocks, anything like that. You know, and it's tough. They're not going through the motions. They're better than that. But it's almost like a derby game where the underdogs in Egypt have nothing to lose. And if they go out and they win this game, it'll be a huge day for them.
There's Gervinho. It's broken down all too easily again. Abu Trika helping it on for Egypt. Back again by Eboué. Zakora. Kolo Touré. It's a bit of a rivalry that's built up over the last few years between Egypt and Ivory Coast, where one team seems to achieve what the other one wants. Ivory Coast qualifying for the World Cup in 2006 and 2010. Egypt desperate to get back to the World Cup, haven't qualified since 1990. Yet since then have won the African Nations Cup 4 times. While Ivory Coast have failed to be successful in the continental showpiece. Here's Mosen. Holy grail for Egypt is very much World Cup qualification. Gervinho's header. Goma. Zakora there exchanging views with Gaba. Neither goalkeeper troubled yet, approaching the 15th minute. Here's Touré. Touré again. Going long this time, looking for Traoré, who almost got the better of, well, Goma. He's a real handful, Traoré, if he's given the service. In more ways than one.
Yeah, I think he just left his foot in on the goalkeeper. A little bit of frustration, I think. Should have done better with the control. Missed the ball, and then, well, just left his foot in on the keeper. Just gave him a little nudge, and goalkeeper wasn't too pleased with that one.
Hasn't had too much of a look in, as you can understand, at international level, with Didier Drogba obviously ahead of him in the pecking order. Keen to prove a point. So approaching 15 minutes gone here in Abu Dhabi. It's Ivory Coast 0, Egypt 0. Last warm-up for Ivory Coast before attempting yet again to win the Africa Cup of Nations. It's that one success way back in 1992, way before the days of the so-called golden generation. As soon as you get tagged with that, you seem to fail, don't you? Same happened for Portugal, England, and Ivory Coast now.
Well, it's always difficult, the weight of expectation. You know, when you go somewhere and everyone expects you to win, and you have the players and the capabilities to win, you know, that extra pressure, teams playing against it, so often we see it, you know, in league football. You know, that team raises their game when they're playing against the big clubs or the big world nations. You know, their performance levels rise by 10–15%, and they make it that little bit harder.
Aboutrika, foul by Traoré.
Difficult for Traoré. He's obviously got a point to prove. Undoubtedly, you know, the talisman for Ivory Coast is Didier Drogba. If he's fit, certain starter in this team. But, you know, if he goes out, you know, he can put a little bit of pressure on Drogba. Maybe just make the manager think of one or two possibilities. You know, if Drogba isn't 100% fit, put himself in the frame.
He's got a good scoring record, 9 goals in 16 Russian league matches this season for Angie. It's not just his aerial presence as well. He's got a neat touch and decent on the ground. It's Guedo. Now Goma. And Fati. To Gabet. Chance here maybe for Egypt. Kolo Touré across though, just to get there ahead of Guedo. Egypt win it back again. Heading towards Guedo. Picked up by El Said. And it's just too high. Well over, in fact, in the end.
Just got the ball caught under his feet. Good movement, sharp from Egypt. They certainly look the hungrier team. Just there, the ball's just under his feet. He's trying to lean back to get a little bit of power. Unfortunately, can't quite get over the ball high and wide. But so far, been quite impressed with the Egyptian team. They do, they certainly look hungrier, they look sharp, they look organised. Ivory Coast really yet to get going and haven't offered anything going forward.
Gradle. Foul by Fati. Played in his first Africa Cup of Nations last year, Max Gradle. John Sanatian from Leeds, as Danny said. A decent record at Leeds, 25 goals in 77 appearances, not bad from a wide player.
Yeah, I think that they were sad to see him go. It went relatively cheaply in the end, getting towards the end of his contract. I think Leeds fans wanted him to stay. He did have one or two temperamental issues at times, but, you know, undoubtedly is a threat with his pace.
Kanawi's crossing, and Egypt have taken the lead through Aboutrika. Wonderful ball by Kanawi, the left back. And the experienced campaigner, Aboutrika, pops up with the header. And Egypt lead after 19 minutes.
Well, probably what the Egyptians deserve, in all honesty. They've been sharper, they've been first to the ball, they've been on the front foot. It's a good ball out wide. And just there, you know, there's no real hurry whatsoever from Aboué to get near that cross. It doesn't put the player under any pressure. The cross comes into the box far too easily. And I think it's Kolo Touré is just on his heels Trigger gets across him, and a good header. Nothing the keeper can do about it. One of those little flicks that just loops into the far corner. But nothing more, I think, than the Ivory Coast deserve. They've been sloppy early on, you know, and they certainly haven't looked sharp. And fair play to Egypt. They've come here to win, to put on a performance, and they're doing that.
And the traditional celebration from Essam El Hadari that we were so used to seeing in the Africa Cup of Nations. Maybe a friendly, but it means a lot to Egypt. Any victory they can get against the likes of the Ivory Coast. In fact, when you watch Egypt play, you do wonder how they were beaten by the Central African Republic. It was quite extraordinary. Lost at home 3-2, and then failed to turn it around in the second leg that finished 1-1. Also a truncated qualifying tournament for the Cup of Nations with just a year in between tournaments. And as CAF decided to move it to odd years to get it away from the World Cup, I think long-term a sensible decision. But a concerned look there from Sabri Lamouchi. Ivory Coast's long unbeaten record in jeopardy here against their old rivals from North Africa. Here's Zakora. Yet on paper, Danny, at the start of the game, Ivory Coast looked to have the stronger team out there.
Yeah, I think the Ivory Coast just look a little bit complacent at the moment. Possibly they went out with the idea, big players, big names, big reputations, but yet they haven't quite put in the work rate that goes with that. Really, it's been all Egypt. You know, they've been sharp, they've been passing the ball well, organisation. You know, Bob Bradley's obviously doing a real good job at the moment. And it's difficult for the Ivory Coast. If they're not careful, you know, you get into this sort of habit, it becomes very, very difficult to pick it up in the first game when the competition starts proper.
Traoré certainly putting himself about again, catching Ashore. Another free kick for Egypt. Kanawi. It was a great ball in from Kanawi to Abu Trika. Here's Goma. TNA's header. Now Razak. And the break is on again here now for Egypt. This is Ghetto. Stepping away from Eboe. Abu Trika, I think, thought about the shot. And Gabet. And Ivory Coast close ranks, and Gradle can bring it away. Here's Tiene. Great pace about the game. Traoré, certainly not being played like a friendly. Rabia. Now Goma. Now Ashore. Of course, Ivory Coast only had to play 2 games to qualify for the Nations Cup, but it was a couple of tough games. They drew Senegal to play over 2 legs. Of course, the second leg turned into the story of the qualifiers when Ivory Coast were leading 2-0 and the Senegalese fans rioted with 15 minutes to go. The match was abandoned, but the result stood. Senegal, one of the other big names missing from this tournament, along with Egypt and Cameroon. Here's Kanawi. It's a neat touch towards Al Said. Tiote across. And that's a corner for Egypt.
I think the worry for the Ivory Coast at the moment is that they're playing like a team of individuals, where, you know, completely the opposite for the Egyptians are playing like a real team. No real superstars in that side, much more togetherness.
Deep delivery this time. Also, Bamba got a crucial touch on that while Goma was just winding up for the volley. Well, the form has been a bit hit and miss from Egypt since they went out to the Central African Republic. They drew with Oman, they beat Congo, lost to Tunisia, drew with Georgia, beat Qatar, and then lost to Ghana on Thursday. So it's kind of win one, lose one, draw one at the moment for Egypt. And they've certainly started this game brightly enough. It looks as though we're going to get an early change. And it's the lone striker who is coming off, Marwan Mosen, to be replaced by Al-Sayed Hamdi.
I presume he's got to be injured. Didn't really walk off with much of a limb, didn't seem to be struggling too much, but surely that can't be a tactical change, you know, this early when they're doing so well.
Yeah, it'd be a bit harsh, wouldn't it, to hook him off for tactical reasons.
Especially, you know, the Egyptians have been well on top in the game. You know, the goalkeeper yet has been completely untroubled. I can't remember the Ivory Coast really getting more than 4 or 5 passes in succession together. You know, and maybe, you know, this only one warm-up game could be the undoing of them.
It's Hamdi to Al Said. Yeah, most of the other nations have managed to get a couple of matches in. First match for 2 months for Ivory Coast, then one warm-up and then they're straight in. Togo, January the 22nd, 4 days later Tunisia, and then it's Egypt's big rivals, Algeria. All 3 matches in Rustenburg for Ivory Coast. Here's Solbamba. TNA. Gradle did well to keep it in play and get the cross in. Here's Abu Trika, the goal scorer. It's not going to be much of a wave, is it?
Probably not even quarter of the stand. It's going to stop, and they're going to have to wait 3 or 4 minutes until the pretend crowd, if you like.
Yeah, someone's going to have to time it, aren't they, and say, I reckon about now, up we go.
I think either that or someone's going to have to run round the outside of the stadium and get back to the beginning.
Fatty throw for Egypt. Knocked away by TNA. It's Tiote. Javinho. There's Max Gradle. Javinho. Gradle took it away, but the ball just ran away from him.
Just not quite happening for the Ivory Coast. The touch at times is letting them down. They're not quite making the right pass, making the right decision. You know, rusty, a little bit sloppy, maybe a little bit complacent, playing off reputations rather than actually performance at the moment.
Such an experienced team as well. Bearing in mind, in the 23 that Sabri Lamouchi's name, there's 6 of the survivors who played way back in the 2006 final against Egypt. So it's a squad that's been together for such a long time. You almost wonder if the pressure they put on themselves at times is too much for them. Memorably collapsed to Egypt in 2008 when they were beaten 4-1 in the semi-final. Another match that Ivory Coast started as big favourites. Boué to Javinho. That's by Rabia. Ball from Javinho. It's cleared away though from Razak. It's Gabet. Razak perhaps the one surprise in the Ivory Coast starting 11. He's only played once for Manchester City this season. New Year's Day appearance against Stoke. He was on loan at Charlton where he only made 2 appearances. And yet here he is, starting for Ivory Coast. Here's Bamba. It's wayward from Tiote. And Gabet. Promising run from Gabet. Towards Hamdi. Fatty wins it back for Egypt. They're struggling to get out here, Ivory Coast. Now Abu Trika. Here's Ghedo. Oh, it's very last ditch from Ivory Coast. Very scrappy defending at times. Now Bamba's missed the clearance. Egypt putting more pressure on here. Hamdi. Faced by Tierney. Hamdi's cross headed away by Toure. Just can't get it clear. Fired back in by Kanawi. And finally, Ivory Coast clear the ball away. This is good stuff from Egypt, isn't it? With and without the ball.
Very good. They're working very, very hard. Ivory Coast putting themselves under enormous pressure. Cheick Tiote giving the ball away twice under no pressure. For a player of that quality, you know, that's such a disappointment. You know, at the moment, there's no zip about their play. There's no eagerness. You know, it's very much, there's no movement, even at the moment. You know, it's just, OK, I've got the ball, now what's going to happen? Everybody's waiting for something to happen. And you do start to wonder, you know, are they so reliant on the likes of Didier Drogba?
Well, I've seen a Traoré that was back there, making the challenge. Hasn't seen too much of the ball, the Ivorian centre forward, but his work rate certainly there.
It needs a good run or a good shot, you know, something just to lift the players. Obviously, you know, the crowd isn't big enough. They're not going to lift the team. You know, the coach on the sidelines can't do an awful lot. You know, it needs Max Gradel to go on a dribble or Gervinho to have a run at somebody, maybe have a shot, even if it goes over the bar, just to think, actually, no, we are in this. You know, it's a proper football match in a game that we don't want to lose.
There are plenty of attacking options on the bench for Ivory Coast. Aruna Kone of Wigan, Salomon Kalou is on the bench, Drogba, Wilfred Boney, very highly rated player from Vitesse Arnhem. Here's Gradel. It is such a talented 23, but can they work as a cohesive unit? Well, it's flown by the opening half an hour, and I have to say, what we've seen so far, we all like a shock, don't we, in football, but Egypt are looking like a big miss from the Cup of Nations on this performance.
Really good performance. Obviously, you know, as we said, the underdog raising their game. Big game for them against the Ivory Coast, trying to prove a point.
A free kick to deal with here, though. Made in by Gradel. A high delivery. Gervinho puts it back across, but straight to El Hadari.
Again, no real conviction. For me, free kick was poor. Wasn't whipped in with real pace, miss-hit, went deep to the far post, and Gervinho really just put his foot on the ball, you know, and allowed it to bounce goalwards rather than having a good strike, you know, trying to get something and make the keeper have a real tough save.
It's Gradel again. Fatty getting back goal side of him. Gradel once more. Abu Trika doubles up though, and Egypt come away with the ball.
Just look at that, 4 Egyptian players around 2 Ivorian coasts. That's what, you know, Egypt are working so much harder than the Ivory Coast at the moment. I think the coach will be disappointed at half-time. He'll have to get them in, you know, and he'll want to see a change in attitude, if nothing more. Yes, the players don't want to get injured, but they've got to put on a better performance than this.
It's Traoré. Now Fatty. Certainly a much better performance than Egypt produced in the 3-0 loss to Ghana on Thursday. And then it's a different team. Here's Gradel. Touch back by Razak. Gradel goes for goal, but straight at El Hadari. But that's better. First time we've really seen some interplay between the front players.
Just choked his shot a little bit. Didn't quite swing through it, and an easy save in the end for the goalkeeper. But I think you make a good point in the fact that, you know, the change in team, all these Egyptian players have a point to prove. They're out to impress. The Ivory Coast players, probably 9 of them, no matter how they play today, they know they're going to start that first game in the African Cup of Nations. So maybe they're just taking it a little bit too easy.
There's Fatty. I think 9 is the exact number as well. I think it's only Lassina Traore and Abdul Razak who probably feel they won't start against Togo.
The trouble is when the rest of the team are playing like this, you know, they're not really doing themselves much justice in terms of, you know, getting into that team and forcing the coach to make a change.
It's Fati to Hamdi. Tierney, great skill to get away from Gabet. Solbamba. This is Toure. Now Eboué. That's poor again. I mean, that will go down into the unforced error column, that.
There's been far too many of those passes going astray under no pressure. You know, if you're under pressure, you've got your head down, someone's coming in to make a challenge, okay, you have to accept sometimes that you're going to give the ball away. But then you've got 2 or 3 yards of space. The quality that these players have shouldn't be giving the ball away that cheaply.
It's Goma. Rabia. This is Hamdi. Ghetto. Abu Trika. He thought about lining one up. The whistle has gone though. The flag is up for offside.
Very close call. I'm not quite sure. Linesman certainly didn't give the forward the benefit of the doubt.
Tierney. Razak. It's good vision to pick out Gradle. Forced him a bit wide with the ball. Gradle has kept it in though. Nice turn by Gradle. It's got him behind Fati. And penalty, says the referee. Well, that is the kind of thing that Max Gradle can produce. Seemed to be going nowhere, but he skipped away from Fati. And the referee, with no hesitation, points straight to the spot, and a great chance for Ivory Coast to pull level.
Well, this could well get them back into it from absolutely nowhere. At first look, I thought it was soft. As we look again at the replay, it's good play to start with. There's always that doubt. I'm not sure how much contact is there. He has a little tug there.
No, I think it's harsh.
I think he's gone down far too easy. If he feels the first contact, he feels a second contact outside the box, and I think it just takes a tumble more than anything else. I don't think there's an awful lot that Fati could have done that. Once he realised in the box, didn't make the challenge, and Gervinho now, can he equalise?
Well, he certainly can. No mistake from Gervinho. Moves into double figures for international goals for Ivory Coast. But there is no doubt that Egypt will feel hard done to here in more ways than one. They have dominated the opening 38 minutes of this game. Gradle has most certainly bought a penalty for Ivory Coast there. When you look at this replay, okay, there's a tug on the shirt there, the nudge there, but when he actually goes down, there's barely any contact. And no wonder Egypt are furious. But all said and done, a good penalty from Gervinho, and it's 1-1.
Yeah, cool penalty. Waited for the goalkeeper to move, kept an eye on him, and just he did put it the other side. Didn't have to be right in the corner. Difficult skill, that waiting. But just interesting, after that, I think it was Bamba and the captain Zakora just having words. I think, you know, they've realised they've got back into this game. They probably don't deserve to be back in it. And I think, again, it probably makes, as we approach half-time, that the team talk easier for Bob Bradley. He said, look, you know, a bit of injustice, go out in the second half and play as you've done, you know, and make sure you go and win this game, because it's perfectly winnable for the Egyptians.
There's Razak. Now Ghetto. Well, there seems to be a constant debate, doesn't there, about diving. Is that cute play from Gradle, or is that beyond the rules, in your view?
It's very, very difficult. My stance on diving is if there's contact, you have the right to go down.
Oh, here's a chance for Traore. Go back to that point in a moment. Here's Gradle. Just ran into trouble there, Max Gradel. And he's still got possession of the ball. His Tiote. Oh, looking for the run of Traore. Great chance, and it's 2-1 for Ivory Coast. What a remarkable turnaround. Lovely ball from Chik Tiote. And Lassina Traore, presented with the chance, takes it. It's 2 goals in 2 appearances now in the shirt of the Ivory Coast for Lassina Traore. Let's see if it was onside. It certainly was. It's a lovely time run, and from nowhere, Ivory Coast lead.
Incredible turnaround. They were not in the game. The keeper's been completely untroubled. Gradel, that one shot from distance, which was, well, barely a shot, you know, and suddenly, from being out of it, not in the game at all, they suddenly lead 2-1. And I suppose that's the only difference between the 2 teams, really. They do have players of real quality. It was a great ball from Tiote, just dinked over top of the defence. I think Traore, it gets a touch fortunate. That first one, I'm not quite sure whether that's a shot the outside of his left foot or he's trying to bring that down and control it. The keeper doesn't get enough on it to push it out of harm's way, and it's a simple tap-in.
I think, like you, I think it was a miscontrol that wrong-footed Al Hadari.
I think if you're going to try and shoot from that distance, you're going to drive it with the laces or even toe poke it. But the outside of the foot, I think he was possibly trying to take it across the goalkeeper to then roll it into an empty net. It wasn't maybe exactly what he meant, but in the end, they will say it's 2-1 on the score sheet, and it worked.
Well, I guess in the last couple of minutes, we've seen why Ivory Coast are favourites for the African Cup of Nations. A shocking performance in the opening 38 minutes, and yet they lead by 2-1. Cute piece of play by Gradel, a rather harsh penalty, you have to say, but then a beautiful ball from Chik Tiote, and albeit with a touch of fortune, finished off by Lassina Traore. It is talent that has them in front here against Egypt, who have been by far the better team in this first half. We were saying they'd be aggrieved at 1-1. What will they be feeling now?
Well, I think, you know, it's difficult team talk for Bob Bradley. Egypt have done almost everything right, just a lapse in concentration. Although, yes, it was probably a dive, and Gradel threw himself to the floor. Fati did get himself in a bad position, you know, and he did get beaten, and you always run the risk of giving away a penalty. And then it's just a lapse in concentration, and that's maybe due to a little bit of inexperience, if you like, in that Egyptian side.
There's Toure. Well, it does defy logic at times, football. And this match is very much in that category. Actually, that's amazing. I'm amazed it's 50-50 possession. Here's Gradel.
Not sure if someone's been counting that right. just an easy one at half-time, half each, that'll do.
Yeah.
That's the way it seems. I think could make for a really intriguing second half, though. I think Egypt will want to come out and prove a point. You know, they've been very, very unlucky to find themselves 2-1 down. But you're right, it's talent, individual skill, if you like. But as a team, Ivory Coast still yet to get going.
El Said. Ghetto. Forward again, Ghetto. Went for the return, but El Said couldn't pick a way through. This is Kanawi, who's cross-put Egypt in front. He's dug out another cross, Kanawi. It's behind Gabé, though. It's a good ball in when he gets forward, the Egyptian left-back. It's Ghetto. On to Fati. Kanawi picked somebody out again. Ghetto was in there. Comes to Abu Trika. Cleared away by Kolo Toure. There's Max Gradel. Razak. Traore initially made a run for him. He uses Gervinho instead. On penalty duty in the absence of Didier Drogba. There's Bamba. That's all we said. It's a great habit to have, play badly and win, and Ivory Coast is certainly doing that in this first half. Gabet. Well played by Gabet. Now Al Said. Kanawi again charging forward. Ghetto in support too. Here is Ghetto. Gabet. This is El Said. Abu Trika. Played it into the back of Gabet, but got it back again. Egypt. Abu Trika into El Said. Again, Ivory Coast scramble it away. Doesn't look the most organised at times, does it, the Ivory Coast defending?
Certainly not. I think the only criticism you can have of Egypt, when they get in the last third of the pitch, they get in that attacking area around the edge of the box, they just lack a little bit of invention and a little bit of creativity, that special player that we see in so many teams, that number 10 to just unlock the defence. They don't seem to have that.
It's Kanawi. It's Kanawi again. Put it out by Zakora. Yeah, they're missing a Hossam Hassan or a Mohamed Zidane. Those who have led the line so well for Egypt previously. It's a long-range effort, which is well wide. And that should just about be that from the first half in Abu Dhabi. Well, Egypt were well beaten by West African opposition Ghana on Thursday, and as it stands, they're halfway towards another defeat, but they will be wondering just how on earth they are behind against Ivory Coast. A header from Abu Trika, from a lovely ball in from Kanawi, putting Egypt deservedly in front on 19 minutes. And there really didn't seem to be any response from Ivory Coast, having fallen a goal down. But then it all changed 7 minutes before the half-time break. Bob Bradley would have been delighted with his team's first half performance. But then after Max Gradel had won a penalty and Gervinho had equalised, the giant Lassina Traore finishing off a beautiful through ball from Chiktiote. And it is Ivory Coast, the pre-tournament favourites of the Africa Cup of Nations, who lead Egypt at half-time by 2-1. We don't go anywhere. We're going to take a short break, and then we'll be back with the best of the action from the first half very shortly. A decent opening 45 minutes, and certainly Egypt will feel aggrieved at, one, the award of the penalty for Ivory Coast equaliser, and two, the fact that they're 2-1 down against the #1 ranked African team. And they'll be determined to put that right in the second half. It'll be interesting to see if either coach Danny makes any changes at half-time, particularly Ivory Coast, bearing in mind that the start of the Nations Cup for them is just over a week away.
Well, they haven't put too much effort in so far, but obviously Didier Drogba there, we see him now with the captain's armband, is going to come on for the second half. You know, their talismanic striker, yet to be confirmed, but you have to assume that it's Traore. He's got his goal, he's gone off. And you just wonder that they need something, I think, the Ivory Coast. They need a bit of a catalyst. You know, maybe Drogba can just give them that boost.
Well, what a fantastic player he has been for various clubs and country, particularly Chelsea, an absolute legend now. Of course, that winning penalty against Bayern Munich, forever entering him into West London folklore. And Drogba is on for the second 45 minutes here for Ivory Coast. So Ivory Coast 2, Egypt 1 in Abu Dhabi. Final 45 minutes for Ivory Coast before they head off to South Africa to take on Togo next Tuesday. For Egypt, it's their last game until February the 5th, when they take on the South American side Chile, which will be their only game before the next World Cup qualifier at home to Zimbabwe in March. So far so good for both these teams in their World Cup qualifying campaigns. Both top their groups after 2 matches. Flag up immediately against Didier Drogba. That was almost an electric start to the second half for Ivory Coast. Solomon Kalou has come on as well.
I would also expect that, you know, the coach at half-time has got into his players a little bit, said, come on, you know, you've got to put on performance. You've got away with it in the first half. You know, a little bit of luck, a little bit of brilliance, if you like. But, you know, you need to start coming together as a team. This could be your last chance, you know, to win this African Cup of Nations. So, therefore, you know, go out, start on the right foot. Let's go into this tournament on a little bit of a high.
34 now. Didier Drogba. Next Cup of Nations will be in 2 years' time. Can't imagine he will still be playing for Ivory Coast at 36. Here is Gervinho. I would imagine it looks like it's Max Gradel and Lassina Traoré, the two players who have come off for Ivory Coast. Arthur Boca is on as well. It's back with Barry. It's Touré. Far ahead of Kalu.
Lots of changes made by the Ivory Coast at half-time. You know, we're just trying to top them up, trying to whiz round, work out who's on, who's come, who's gone off. Obviously, a change in formation, but an opportunity for them players, you know, to get another 45 minutes of football. You know, just to sharpen their skills without over-exerting themselves, if you like.
Well, Lolo is on. Yaya Touré is on as well to add to Drogba and Kalu. Tiote is still there. TNA is being replaced by Boca, left back. Here's Ghetto for Egypt. They're almost facing a different Ivory Coast team now in the second half. Yaya Touré. What a player he is. Fantastic player, isn't he? Yaya Touré, so key to whatever Manchester City and Ivory Coast do.
You know, he has that drive, doesn't he? He gets the ball, those long legs. I think he's better for Manchester City when he plays a little bit further forward. We've seen him get into the box, score goals. Slightly different to the way he played when he was at Barcelona, that holding midfield role. I like him going forward.
Well, the flag's up against Drogba. He scored some key goals for Manchester City in their run firstly to the FA Cup victory and then of course to the Premier League title last season.
I think him being in this competition is a big blow to Manchester City. You know, they haven't found anywhere near a replacement or someone that can step into those very big shoes that he leaves behind.
Touch off by El Said. El Said again. Tiote charging back. This is Touré. Emmanuel Boué has made way for Igor Lolo, right back. Shove there by Tiote. El Said. And again El Said. Oh, it was a crucial challenge from Lolo. Crossing again from Kenawi. Whenever he sees an opportunity, Kenawi, the ball is put straight into that penalty area. The Egyptian left back. So a good game, particularly coming forward.
Decent left foot, hasn't he? Wants to get the crosses in, puts the ball into the box with real quality. You just think, you know, if only Egypt, you know, had a Didier Drogba in the middle, you know, someone that with pace, with power, that can go and attack those crosses.
It's Kalu. Kalu, who, like Drogba, left Chelsea. He's playing in French football now with Lille. Constantly being linked with moves back to the Premier League. Here's Gervinho. Good pace from Gervinho to get away from Fati. A really good run from Gervinho, and he's pulled it back behind everybody. Split the three of them that were in the penalty area there, Gervinho.
Fantastic run. Pace, power that we've seen him do for Arsenal at times, and didn't quite have the right pass.
Here's Hamdi. Up against Toure. Hamdi, who replaced Mosen in the first half. Cross again from Kanawi. Just hung in the air this time, and it's headed behind by Boca for an Egyptian corner.
Again, that left foot, great ball into the box. Maybe just a touch too high, but again, causing one or two problems. And, you know, what can Egypt do with this corner?
Header away by Drogba. Something he's always done so well, isn't it? Didier Drogba come back and help defend set pieces.
Well, he's tall, you know, he's strong. When you used to play against him, you know, obviously when he was at Chelsea, you know, you'd go in, you'd get the team sheet in. If his name was missing from that team sheet, you'd breathe a huge sigh of relief. He's one of those players that if he fancies it on his day, he has absolutely everything.
Here's Ghetto. Here's Kanawi. Did well to keep that in play. Lolo sticking with him. Miguel Lolo, who's playing in Russia with Cuban Krasnodar, the former club of Lassina Traore's, something of a journeyman player. There's Abu Trika. Now Ghetto. First block by Tiote. That's gone behind for a goal kick. Ghetto, who scored the winning goal for Egypt in the 2010 Nations Cup final against Ghana. Broken all the records in the Cup of Nations. Egypt, the 7-time winners, a record in itself. The only nation to win 3 successive Nations Cups. Kalou's header, that 19-match unbeaten run in finals matches. Here's Lolo. Space now for the cross in. A deep delivery is too high for Gervinho, but he's buried it for 3-1. Well, if Traore got fortunate for the second goal, Gervinho most certainly did that. His second of the game, and Sabri Lamouchi's side increased the lead to 3-1 8 minutes into the second half.
Well, again, a little bit of quality, if you like, from the Ivory Coast. Great little dink ball to the far post, and it's Fati. It just takes his eye off the ball. Gervinho goes for the header, gets underneath it and misses it. Because of that, Fati takes his eye off it and it hits him. You know, it's unfortunate, but he possibly could have prevented it. It falls very, very kindly at the feet of Gervinho, who smashes the ball, and, well, keeper can't do anything from that range, and even the defender on the line, it hits him, but ends up in the back of the net. And suddenly now, probably the sort of result that we maybe expected at the beginning of the game, but it's taken a strange performance, and maybe one or two senior players to come on to really get the Ivory Coast players going.
Well, he's had his critics, certainly amongst Arsenal supporters. Gervinho, it's felt that he's always played his best football wearing the shirt of the Ivory Coast. Loved him at Lille, though, his former club. And he'll certainly be going to South Africa in a confident mood. A couple of goals already under his belt, Gervinho.
I think what we expect in England is players with real work rate. We're not prepared to accept players with class and with flair that don't run around all over the place. You know, they want to save their energy for, you know, for doing their tricks and skills and attacking players. We're still not quite come round to that way of thinking yet, especially in the English Premier League. You know, we like to see tackles, we like to see hard work first and foremost. And I think at times we sacrifice that, you know, for the technical ability.
There's Fati. Egypt heading for a second straight defeat then. This They can turn it around. Plenty of time to go. It's 10 minutes gone in the second half, but Ivory Coast with a 2-goal advantage. Giaconan. Kalu, it's asked an awful lot though of the Lille forwards. He's never going to get there.
I think Egypt should be careful not to start chasing the game and really get stretched and get opened up. You know, that would be a huge shame if that happened. Difficult for Bob Bradley. They've played well. You know, they've been organised. Unfortunately, they don't quite have the out-and-out quality that the Ivory Coast have in their side, and that's probably the only difference between the two teams at the moment. You know, that special player in the final third, that bit of creativity, is the difference between the two teams.
Flag up this time. Certainly more life in Ivory Coast since half-time. Introduction, as you say, of some key men: Drogba, Yaya Toure, Salomon Kalou.
It's not just about what those players bring in terms of physicality. It's also what they bring in terms of experience, you know, the drive and desire, you know, and getting everybody else around them to play well. Not accepting, you know, that first half performance, I think, is a big key to that.
Certainly plenty of positives from Egypt in the first half, except the concession of the 2 goals, the fact that they did dominate possession against a side like Ivory Coast.
It's like I said, it's a very, very difficult one for Bob Bradley. His team hasn't done an awful lot wrong. You know, there's the odd mistake, but, you know, you're going to get that.
With El Hadari. It's Fati, fairly competent goalkeeper with the ball at his feet, SM El Hadari. It's Fati. Here's Ghetto. Lolo went down and looked around as if to suggest he was fouled by Ghetto. But there was no whistle.
I think it was just a coming together. You know, sometimes when two players they've got their eye on the ball, it's a long pass, they're running. You know, contact happens, and I think Lolo wanted the free kick, but the referee certainly wasn't going to give it.
2 victories in their last 8 games for Egypt. That included Thursday's loss to Ghana. It's looking like 2 in 9. Stab through though, here's a chance for Egypt, and that's terrific goalkeeping by Barry to get there ahead of Hamdi.
Superb goalkeeping, absolutely excellent. Brilliant ball through, just a little deft touch with the outside of the foot, in behind Bamba, but the keeper read it well, came out almost right to the edge of his box to prevent a goal-scoring opportunity.
Well defended by Rabia in the meantime. It's end-to-end at the moment. Fati. Now Ashore. Gabet. Fati again. Could be a key save that from Boubacar Barry. And Hamdi got in there and pulled it back to 3-2. It would have been game on again. Here's Al Saeeds. Picking out the run of Ghetto. And he has picked out Ghetto. His first touch just taking him away from Lolo. And then Lolo getting the block in. Does like to cut in and hit them with his right foot, Ghetto. It's how he scored that winner in the 2010 final against Ghana. But Lolo's a pretty big unit to try and bend the ball round.
Yeah, it got caught out in the first instance, you know, got his body shape wrong, which allowed Ghetto to get in. His touch wasn't perfect, and then a little bit of desperation, I think.
And that's easy for Barry, although he's made a bit of a meal of it from Fati's cross.
Just took his eye off it as it comes in. It's a good ball in, you know, that area, edge of the 6-yard box. And I think Barry is possibly thinking it's a routine catch, maybe thinking about he's going to throw it out, and just lost concentration.
Egypt pressing again. Kanawi with the ball in, and it's 3-2. Lovely ball in by Kanawi, and then tucked away by Ghetto. And Egypt are back in the game, approaching the hour. It is Egypt 2, Ivory Coast 3, and the goals keep on flowing.
Fantastic response from Egypt after going 3-1 behind. They haven't dropped their heads, you know, they've come back into the game, they've gone for it. Well, I'm not sure about Lolo at right back at the moment. He looks all over the place. Defensive shape, concentration is not good, but it's Kanawi again, you know, putting that ball into the box. We've seen him do that 5 or 6 times so far in this game, And that's a beautiful cross. Doesn't smash the ball across, puts it in with a little bit of pace, but plenty of control, plenty of opportunity for the striker, and Guedo really had the simplest of tap-ins. And suddenly now, Egypt, you know, back in with a shout.
It's Fati charging forward. You get the feeling they've fallen asleep a bit, Ivory Coast, since they went 3-1 up, almost as though they felt it was game over. But Bob Bradley's side have shown it's far from it. Hamdi almost got in before Barry made that terrific save, but nothing he could do for Guedo's goal after another lovely ball across from Kanawi. He'd been impressed with his crossing, but it was his composure there as well, just to assess the situation and lay it on a plate for Guedo to score. There's hope again for the Egyptian supporters.
I think it's nothing more than they deserve, though. You know, on the balance of play, that the chances that have been created. Come on.
Goodness me, Fati under pressure. Gomar got him out of trouble.
A couple of individual errors, the iffy penalty, if you like. You know, well, it's a couple of good passes from the Ivory Coast, but apart from that, they haven't really threatened too much. And you know, it's been difficult for Egypt. You know, 3-1 I think was a little bit unfair. 3-2 is a much fairer result, although I think, you know, they will argue that they should effectively, a draw would be the fair result at the moment.
Are you impressed with the attitude of both sets of players? I mean, it's not like a friendly, is it? If you didn't know better, you'd think this was an Africa Cup of Nations match, the way they've said about it.
Ivory Coast in the second half have come out much better. I think, you know, there was obviously maybe a bit of a Sir Alex Ferguson hairdryer at half-time for one or two players. Lots of changes, and sometimes that can really affect the balance of the team, and it can go the other way. You know, it's had a positive effect on the team. You know, they do look a little bit sharper, and suddenly now there's just one or two tackles flying in.
It's Ashore who's taken the brunt of that challenge from Tiote. Free kick then for Egypt. He certainly wouldn't back against an equaliser for Egypt, given the way they've played here. It's a really open game now as well. And that's a poor through ball, easy enough for Al Hadari. Heavy touch from Kalu. Now Said and Fati into Ashore. Back with Toure. Just Boca. Tiote. Yaya Toure. Boca was offside. Another experienced player, Boca, 29 now, has won over 70 caps. Player who won the Bundesliga title with Stuttgart back in 2007. Oh, Egypt have played themselves into trouble now. This is Drogba, slides it through to Gervinho, and he completes his hat-trick. It is 4-2 to Ivory Coast, or no, the flag is up. And that is just as well for Egypt, who really almost brought about their own downfall.
Well, I think as the game gets more open, the quality that the Ivory Coast have will really tell. Again, a tight decision, but probably the right one from the linesman on this near side. It was a good ball through, a very, very good finish. And Egypt have got to be careful that they don't get stretched.
And now they're pressing at the other end.
The more end-to-end, the more open this game is, it's going to be harder for the Egyptian players. You know, the Ivory Coast, fresh legs, don't forget, lots of changes at half-time, real quality players. And as the game gets stretched, they will really come to the fore.
I'll tell you what, though, if Ivory Coast can have Gervinho in the kind of finishing form he's been in here, that's going to be a massive bonus for them, isn't it? Not just relying on Drogba, because what a confident finish. He didn't know he was offside.
No, he played it, you know, he thought he'd scored, you know, wheeled away, ready to celebrate. And again, it's odd, because you're right, you see him for Arsenal, he doesn't have that air of confidence about him. You know, whether he feels under a little bit of pressure at Arsenal, the fans haven't quite taken to him. But here, you know, playing for his his home nation, full of confidence, you know, and looks a quality player that maybe Arsene Wenger thought he was buying.
25 minutes to go. You get the slight feeling there may be more goals in this game. I don't want to jinx it, but it's been a thoroughly engaging contest. 5 goals in 65 minutes. One marginal offside against Gervinho, preventing Ivory Coast from going 2 ahead. They're defending very high, aren't they, Egypt? And they're almost in danger of being caught by a ball like that.
Yeah, they are. They've just lost a little bit of discipline. They've lost a little bit of their organisation and a little bit of their shape. Just saw Bob Bradley waving his arms, you know, trying to get back to almost 2 banks of 4, if you like. Just get through the next 5 minutes. You know, just need a little bit of composure from the Egyptian players.
Oh, but Boca's been caught here. Chance maybe now for Egypt. It was a heavy touch. It's been pulled back and Lolo gets it away. But Ivory Coast almost opened up. Boca caught out defensively and Ghetto couldn't just get there. Good play again by Gabet.
It was a difficult one for Gabet. He did incredibly well to go past Boca. He looked up, there was nobody in the box. He went a bit further, there was still nobody in the box. And in the end, he just had to hit and hope.
The corner, and Drogba heads it behind. I think it was the second touch, wasn't it, that let him down? It was just a heavy one, and in the end, he was just saving the ball from going out.
He needed somebody, you know, making up ground, a deep midfield run or a centre forward, you know, getting across the front of somebody, and they just weren't there for him.
More defending, though, for Ivory Coast. An open flowing contest. This is now driven in again towards Gomar. Ghetto got a touch. Gomar again up there battling. It almost fell for the volley. And now Touré clears it away for Ivory Coast. Now Kenawi. Hamdi. Ghetto. Can't afford to let Ghetto cut in on that right foot. Here's Ashur. Egypt keeping possession. El Said. Now Abu Trika. This is Fati. Up against Kalu. Crossing again is headed away by Bamba. Hamdi. Cleared away by Touré. As Hamdi's control let him down. But Egypt are coming on strong again. They've responded really well to the concession of that 3rd goal.
No, I think that's where, you know, Bob Bradley will be really pleased. You know, young players, not the greatest of experience, but they're having a go.
Oh, and Ghetto's through here. Great chance for Ghetto. Barry making the save, and Ghetto felt that he was being fouled. The referee didn't agree, but goodness me, that was close.
At first look, I'm going to say no. He was looking for it, I think. He was hoping more than anything else that the referee was going to give a penalty. It was almost, as he was going down, he was looking at the referee. Touch just got away from him.
It's Tiote. It is so open, isn't it? What an advert this is for the upcoming Africa Cup of Nations. It all kicks off on Saturday, remember, South Africa against Cape Verde. The whole tournament live with us on Eurosport and British Eurosport. Here is Kenawi. Kenawi again. Through the middle again, once more looking for Hamdi. Of course, Ivory Coast against Togo, given that added edge now, the fact that Togo will have Emmanuel Adebayor in their squad. A lovely ball through, wasn't it?
Touch, see, just there, his touch just gets away from him. And I think as he knows it, and he's stretching, he knows he's not going to get it, there may be the slightest of contact.
Slightest tug on the arm from Touré, yeah.
We go back to that debatable one. Is it enough to give a penalty? We see it closely.
There is a tug, isn't there?
There's a touch, and like I said, we talked about it earlier. If there's any sort of contact, you do have the right to go there. Is that enough to give a penalty? Would that be a foul anywhere else on the pitch? Probably not, is the answer in that case.
And he's still got the chance anyway, even though he's fooling.
You know, there is going to be contact. You know, this is football after all. It's what happens.
Well, here's a chance again. Drogba once more back there defending. He's done more work in his own penalty area second half than he has in the Egyptian area. Egypt again dominating possession. Certainly been a good test this for Ivory Coast. Knocked away again by Drogba. They want to know what North African opposition's like. They've certainly found out here from Bob Bradley's side ahead of their clashes with Tunisia and Algeria. Drogba. Here's Kanawi. Recently played Morocco in a World Cup qualifier. That finished 2-2 in Morocco. A win and a draw from Ivory Coast opening 2 games in the 2014 qualifiers, a 2-0 victory against Tanzania. Gambia is the other team in that group, so it's looking like a straight fight between Ivory Coast and Morocco for top spot.
I just wonder how Bob Bradley does with instructions shouting from the edge of the pitch. I know football is pretty much universal language, but even still, you know, in the heat of battle, you know, it can't be easy for him. And I presume, you know, obviously he has to do his team talk in English. I presume he doesn't speak Egyptian, or maybe has a translator with him, and that can't be easy for him at times.
Sabri Lamouchi. It's his first ever coaching job, Lamouchi. Talk about putting yourself into the cauldron immediately. He was a cultured player during his playing days. A lot of his career playing in Italy with the likes of Parma and Inter, Genoa, Marseille and Monaco in France. Here's Ghetto. He's only 41, Lamouchi. Here's Fati. Set forward by Toure. Gomar all the way back to El Hadari.
I think this is the modern day era though, isn't it? If coaches, if they're young, they're aspiring and they're given a chance, they do well. Look at what Pep Guardiola did at Barcelona. You know, they are getting a chance. You know, Andres Villas-Boas. You know, there are some very, very good young coaches with fresh ideas.
Kanawi's cross again. Header away by Bamba, cleared by Boca. And then Toure. I think he was going for Rosette, but it stayed in. Can Gervinho get that? Just pulled up there, Kolo Toure, after making that clearance. I think Gervinho certainly played his way into the starting 11 if it was in doubt. Terrific performance from him. And Toure is okay. There's Jacques Conan, who played that ball through to Gervinho for what he thought was his hat-trick goal. We've got 4 forward here, Egypt. 4 on 3 at the moment if they play it right. And they didn't play it right. Wrong decision from Hamdi.
Again, it's that little bit of lack of quality in the final third that has really been the difference between the two teams. You know, we've seen even the goal from Gervinho that was disallowed. That final little ball that played him through, you know, was exceptional. The Egyptians, they haven't had too much of that. A lot of good play, organised, good side, but they're just lacking, I think, a really good striker or a brilliant number 10 to be a real threat.
It's an Ivory Coast throw. Mohamed Zidane hasn't featured for Egypt since the loss to the Central African Republic. He scored 13 goals in 44 internationals. He was kind of that link player or centre forward. He was comfortable in either position, and a real star of those Cup of Nations successes for Egypt. Of course, who can forget Hossam Hassan, a legend of Egyptian football. But they're the kind of players that you have to replace to keep the momentum going. Here's Fati. Space here for Ghetto. Good, makes best use of that. Gets a second bite at it though. Here's Kanawi, who we know can deliver a good ball. Al Said now. Plays it in behind Al Said. And Boca almost got caught out again there by Gabet. He's getting himself in some strange positions, Boca, as is Lolo, the other fullback that's come on.
Both fullbacks have struggled slightly. It's body position more than anything. You know, as a defender, if the attacker can see the number on the back of your shirt, you're in trouble, because it means he can see everything. You're closed off, you've got no idea where the attacker is, and that's happened to both fullbacks. He was lucky there. I think, you know, just his strength got him out of trouble in the end.
You tend to think, and what we've seen from this game alone, that TNA and Abue will be the first choice fullbacks. Lolo and Boca have both struggled. Fatty's throw. Again, Boca out of position, and the ball is whipped into the area, but it's rather wasted by Gabet. It's all been there, isn't it, for Egypt, except the end product maybe on a more consistent basis.
It almost has been like a, you know, I suppose a top Premier League team, off form, not playing particularly well, but, you know, with several superstars in that team that can produce moments of magic, you know, against a lower, very organised team, you know, without those real quality players in the side, you know, to open the door.
Spotted a foul there, the assistant. As an attacking force, Drogba's barely been in the game, has he?
He's hardly touched it. I think it was his ball through for Gervinho for the offside goal, but apart from that, he seems to have been on his own 6-yard box, heading away corners and free kicks more than anything else.
Well, he's picked up a yellow card.
I think that was the fact that it hit the goalkeeper. You know, he was offside, or the foul was given. You know, if this goes in the back of the net, the referee probably says, OK. The fact it goes straight at the goalkeeper, it looks a little bit more petulant than it probably was.
Apologised immediately, didn't he? And Al Hadari, in fairness, took it in great spirit. They had some terrific battles over the years, Drogba and Al Hadari. He's Goma. Al Hadari, in his own way, a legend of African football, particularly in Egypt. Really impressed with this guy, Kenawi, at left back for Egypt. Certainly helps if you've got a full-back that can deliver the ball like he does.
He's had a really good game. You know, it hasn't really been tested too much defensively, but going forward looks very, very good. So often we say, you know, players with a left foot, they just seem to look a little bit more graceful than the right-footed players. You know, we say, what about, he's got a sweet left foot? Well, he certainly has. And he's delivered, you know, 4 or 5 real top-quality crosses.
Given away by Ashore. Handball the decision, though. And a free kick again for Egypt. 12 minutes to go. It's flown by, this game, which is always a good sign. Let's hope it is a marker for the Africa Cup of Nations.
I think just looking at Tiote's shirt there, you know, dripping with sweat, you know, skin tight, just gives you a feel for how hot it will be for those players out there. You know, I think maybe we didn't consider that in the early stages of the game.
Yakona trying to release Gervinho. I always think the kit manufacturers, it's all well and good making these skin-tight kits when you've got the physique of Chick Tiote, but your average Saturday afternoon supporter, when they buy them, it doesn't quite look the same, does it?
Not quite one for the fans, is it? I think I played against the Cameroon when they first came out with the sleeveless shirts and the vests, and of course, you know, all their bodies were absolutely ripped at the time. I think we had the likes of Robbie Fowler in the England team. It didn't quite suit the skin-tight lycra shirt as well, should we say. Although a fantastic player and an amazing goal scorer.
Throw for Egypt. Yeah, they should almost make a fans version.
Well, I think that's what we have seen in the last, you know, 5 years. People ask me often, you know, what is, you know, the biggest change in football? Yeah. Now every player is an athlete first and foremost. You know, you don't have to be necessarily quick, but you have to be an athlete. Every player's ripped, and you see it when the players swap shirts at the end of the game. You know, every single player, you know, has the six-pack, you know, the big chest, and, you know, and is absolutely ripped.
Still Egypt pressing for this equaliser. An equaliser which, you have to say, from a neutral standpoint, you couldn't begrudge them. Here's Al Said. Now Fatty. Pulls it back to Gaber, who was going for goal. Blocked from Tiote and Bamba, and then a second bite at it is off target. Had a decent game as well on the right side, Gaber.
Yeah, he was unlucky there. Got the ball out. He lined the shot up, unfortunately, straight in to the Ivory Coast defender. You know, if Gervinho would have been, you know, Egyptian playing for them, you know, it could quite easily be, you know, 3 or 4-2. I think is that Asamoah Gyan?
Yeah,
with the headphones on.
Yeah.
Doesn't look too interested, does he? Not sure if he's fallen asleep there.
Scored in Ghana's victory against Tunisia by 4-2. Fabulous player he's been for Ghana, and of course will be one of the stars at the Cup of Nations. Ghana seen as one of the main rivals for Ivory Coast. Of course, it's a West African derby in itself. Oh, the flag has stayed down here. Here's Drogba, and now it's gone up. I talk about biding your time as an assistant. Looks level to me, that. There's Lolo. Oh, it's a square ball, and now it is the 4th goal for Ivory Coast, put away by Didier Yakonan. And that has surely wrapped up the victory and kept their 2-year unbeaten run intact heading into the tournament. It is Egypt 2, Ivory Coast 4. Again,
Just that little bit of quality. He looks up defensively. Lolo has been poor, but you know he looks into that space and he rolls a glorious ball. The second 6-yard box. The goalkeeper can't come for it. The defenders are running back towards their own goal, but you know that extra little bit of pace. You know it's on a plate for him. He's not going to miss from 8 yards out. It's a good finish, but it's a little bit harsh on the Egyptians. Maybe they're just starting to tire, get their shape's gone a little bit. And hopefully, from their point of view, they don't concede anymore.
7th international goal for the Hanover midfielder. Ivory Coast leading by 4-2. They really have shown their threat in the final third, Ivory Coast, haven't they? Without even playing particularly well on the rest of the field. Here's Ashaw. Now Kenawi. Egypt will keep going though. Plenty of positives for Bob Bradley, without doubt, to take from this game. I think certainly more than from the defeat to Ghana on Thursday. Here's Goma.
Can't ever be easy as a manager when your team has played pretty well, you know, and they've been beaten. You know, it must be difficult to pick them up. You know, what do you say to them? They've given everything. You know, a lot of players have played really well, but they simply just don't have the quality of the opposition. And unfortunately, there's not an awful lot you can do about that. It's not like a club game where obviously, you know, you can buy players in. You know, you are stuck with what you've got.
Well, Sherif Ashraf is coming on. Place of El Said. The second change that Bob Bradley has made in this game for Egypt. Ahmed Hassan Meki is warming up down there as well, a player who did feature against Ghana. He's a pretty cool customer. Sabri Lamouchi won 12 caps for France at a time when they were really at their height. He was part of the Euro 96 squad. Here's Tiote. Tiote again. Now Gervinho. Yaya Toure. And Al Hadari gets that.
I think it's incredible, but I think that's probably only the second time that we've actually mentioned Yaya Toure. You know, he's hardly been involved in the game in the second half since he came on.
It's Abu Trika. I think it's fair to say at a different time, Sabri Lamouchi would have won more caps than just his 12, but the likes of Yuri Djorkaeff and Zinedine Zidane were blocking his route into the French team at the time.
It was just as that French team was emerging, wasn't it? Those players coming through. Of course, you know, you had the likes of Manu Petit, Patrick Vieira, you know, fantastic quality throughout the whole French side.
It wasn't the time to be an international midfielder, was it? Played across by Gervinho. Oh, what a chance that was! Well, Solomon Kalou had one as well, but it was the miss kick in the centre from Lolo. Really should have been 5 for Ivory Coast. Great play by Gervinho.
I'll tell you what, if Kalou had scored that, I think he would have tried to say he meant it, and it was a step over. It certainly wasn't. It was a swing and miss. And well, that maybe just sums up his game. He did lay on a fantastic ball for the 4th goal, but positionally he hasn't been great. And really, I think Kalou, a player of his quality, should have done an awful lot better from that distance.
And Abu Trika is off, who scored the opening goal of the game. Amir El Sulaya has come on to replace him. Clearly offside, Hamdi. I'll tell you what, it bodes well for the tournament, though, in the way that Sabri Lamouchi wants Ivory Coast to play. The fact that Igor Lolo, the right-back, was popping up in the centre-forwards position.
Well, I think this is a sign in what's happened over the last couple of seasons, effectively. You know, when you look at the English Premier League, we're getting ludicrous results, you know, 6s and 7s and 5s and 4-3s, and, you know, whereas a time under Mourinho and Arsenal, you know, when 1-0 was enough, no longer the case, you know.
Here's Guedo. Didn't get behind that, it's comfortable for Barry.
It's almost now you've got to score 3 goals to win a game, and sometimes not even that's enough.
Yeah, certainly with Manchester United. I mean, how many times have they fallen behind? It looks like they're going to win the Premier League title with a shocking defensive record, doesn't it? Which was unheard of.
It's absolutely incredible. You know, Newcastle the week, you know, they score 3 goals, you know, away from home. You expect to get something at Old Trafford, and it doesn't happen. And, you know, there have been some astonishing scorelines so far this season. Defending and the art of defending seems like a thing of the past. It's now all about, you know, sort of technical ability and attack, and well, it's great for the neutral. You know, we're getting more and more goals every single week.
Drogba kicking out a ball to Boca. He was totally unmarked. Here's Kalou. Have you seen anything to change your mind about Ivory Coast being favourites for this competition? Strange kind of performance, isn't it? They've scored 4, and yet we're sat here saying they haven't played that well, really. I'll let you answer that in a moment. Here's Al Sharif, though. Now Hamdi. And towards Al Sharif, but cleared by Bamba. Now Ivory Coast looking to break again. Here's Gervinho. Challenged by Rabia. Now Yaya Toure. Boca. Cross in towards Kalou. He couldn't finish. And again, they're finding so much space in that Egyptian penalty area.
Another opportunity. Just going back to that question, I think for me, Ivory Coast, probably in the first half an hour of the game, it was egos and reputations that were playing rather than the players themselves. You know, they were too complacent, a little bit rusty. They haven't played together for some time. You know, came out in the second half, you know, after maybe the coach having a few words at half-time, several changes as well, some experienced players come on. You know, they haven't played particularly well as a team, but we've seen they do have great individuals, and if they can get it together as a team, they are going to be a huge threat for this tournament.
Final minute then. Guedo has made way for Saleh Goma, and Kanawi, the creator of both Egyptian goals, the left-back, is off to be replaced by Abdul Shafi.
I think the fact that they have been given a run for their money, you know, and they didn't play well to start with, might not be a good thing for the rest of the teams. It might have just, you know, sort of given them a little bit of a wake-up call, if you like, going into this tournament, and I expect performances to get better and better from now on.
It's strange, because defensively they've looked all over the place at times here against Egypt, and yet in finishing runners-up a year ago, they didn't concede a single goal in the whole tournament, and yet failed to win the competition. Takes some doing that. Here come Egypt. Barry should get there, and does on the stretch, just ahead of Ashraf. They most certainly have the firepower, don't they, to outgun most of the opposition in the competition.
Well, if they could score 4 goals, not playing particularly well, you know, Drogba's hardly had a kick, Yaya Touré's hardly had a kick as well. You know, they do have fantastic quality and goal scorers all over the pitch, and that will probably be enough to see them through to the latter stages of the competition.
Let's face it, Gervinho's was marginal, that was ruled out. We had the miss kick from Lolo. Kalou with a chance as well. It could have been more. Here's Drogba, the flag is up. Made sure he didn't kick it towards goal this time, or it could have been the most ludicrous sending off ever.
Well, I suddenly thought that. I thought, you know, he's just going to lob that over top of the goalkeeper, you know, and he could end up with a red card, which would have been, you know, disastrous for him in the Ivory Coast.
Barry and Touré messing about with it. 3 minutes to be added on, of which we've had just over a minute. Tiote charging forward. He's Yaya Touré. The names right throughout this Ivory Coast team really are mouth-watering. It's Touré again. And Touré and Tiote in your midfield. He's got himself into a bit of trouble there, though, Yaya Touré, and then he's caught Saleh Goma. It's a free kick to Egypt, and it's a yellow card. Hasn't looked himself, in fairness, since coming on, has he, Yaya Touré?
Just over-complicated it. We haven't seen any surging runs, you know, just lost the ball and just mistimed a tackle. I think he will argue that maybe he got a bit of the ball first, but as we've seen, you know, the way the game is going, the way the laws have changed, you know, even if you get the ball first, if it's considered dangerous or you take the player out, you know, often it's a free kick and a yellow card.
Touré joining Drogba in the book for Ivory Coast. Final 30 seconds. Can Egypt reduce the deficit again? For all Egypt's possession, there's not too much to do, Boubacar Barry. There was a couple of good saves. Whoa, talk about walking a tight line there, as the free kick comes in and it's well over the top in the end from Ashraf, but how lucky was Touré not to see red for that? Again,
Needless. I'm not quite sure, you know, what he was doing. Very, very strange decision to, you know, to grab, to manhandle the referee.
Having just been shown a yellow card.
He could have quite easily took exception to that, and that could have been a straight red, let alone another booking.
Well, the very laid-back Hamad Al Sheikh blows the final whistle.